Hi, I'm Katie Eastman. Thanks for joining us here at Suffolk University's Studio 73 for a special edition of Press Party. It's been 1 year since the day that changed Boston and its media forever. We'll take a look back at the Boston bombings, the incredible reporting, and some incredible mistakes. We're all looking forward to what Monday will bring, how last year's events will shape this year's marathon. And this week marked the 1-year anniversary of the tragedy. It was a day of remembrance that ended in a bomb scare at the finish line. We'll get to those topics soon, but first let's introduce our panel. From Suffolk University, the chair of the Journalism and Communications Department, Dr. Bob Rosenthal. We have Boston Herald multimedia journalist Erica Mora, and former Channel 5 meteorologist and now the Chief Advancement Officer at the Forsyth Institute, David Brown, and we will be on that start line in Hopkinton together on Monday. 1 year later, and the city is still healing from the deadly bombings at the Boston Marathon. 2 explosions at the finish line killed 3 people and injured more than 260 others. Later that week, an MIT officer was killed in the events leading to the capture of the alleged bombers. Let's take a look back at the year of healing.
Your marathon began on April 15th.
Stories of heroes.
I felt very alone, but when he was there, I felt like there was somebody protecting me.
And stories of fighting back.
I'm not letting these fools take my first marathon away from me.
But among these stories of strength, the media showed their weakness. From an incorrect report of the suspect in custody a few days after the marathon,
2 different law enforcement sources that an arrest has been made,
to smaller false rumors that still circulate today.
The cell phone service in these surrounding areas was completely shut down to prevent any possible remote explosive detonations.
It was a chaotic time for law enforcement who couldn't answer many of the media's questions.
There will be questions that you have, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Social media played a huge role in spreading information, but it also allowed the speculation to flow freely.
Investigators have found 5 additional undetonated explosive devices.
1 year later, and we've reported extensively on these mistakes in an effort to create change. Has it worked? For Press Party, I'm Katie Eastman. So we were just saying a lot of these speculations still exist today. The cell phone service, that's something people still say, oh yeah, the police shut that down so that they wouldn't detonate a bomb. And once that information is out there, it is so hard to take it back.
Right.
I mean, you know from your years in TV, if you say something, people will continue to say it.
Well, and the fact that there's no news cycle anymore, the fact that information gets out there so quickly, whether it's through a legitimate news source, the Boston Herald or Channel 5, now people get their news on Twitter from non-reliable sources or from Facebook posts. So I think it helped during the morning of the bombing or the afternoon of the bombing to locate people, but to legitimize the news gathering on mobile devices or from non-mainstream journalists is tough.
So it's been a year. Have things changed? Have we fixed these problems, Dr. Bob?
Probably not. There's a lot of pressure to be first in the news business. And one of the problems, to your point, Dave, is that when regular journalists then use feeds off of Twitter, et cetera, as part of their news account, as CNN did, then you get a lot of errors.
And sometimes that helps because we're taking information from people that are standing right next to what happened, but when you can't verify that, and you're just reporting it as fact right away, that is where we have seen a lot of issues from last year.
Yeah, and I think that it's part of our role as journalists and reporters and editors and whoever is involved in a news organization to really take a moment to slow down, step back and say, okay, we're getting all of this information from Twitter, from Instagram now. You know, the video that we saw of the man on Tuesday was an Instagram video.
Right.
We just need to slow down and say, hold on a second, let's verify this information before we put it out there. But there is that sort of need to be first, to want to be first.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, the fact that, I mean, newspapers are in a different position because you do go to press, but your online news gathering is different. And there is that pressure to get it fast, to be first. And then you can kind of see where the chips fall, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, and you have to consider, as you mentioned, the role of the media in this. Fred Friendly said that one of the great things that happened when John Kennedy was assassinated from the news media is the media held the nation together because it helped us not only to get information, but helped us to grieve.
Or the challenger.
Put things in perspective. Or the challenger, same thing. And really, that's the role of the media. It's a secondary role because the first role is always to provide information and accurate information. But it's also in that process to allow us not to panic and to begin our period of mourning.
And that's what we have seen this entire year. So many incredible survivor stories, some survivors coming back to run the marathon on Monday. So I think in that regard, the media, it was incredible and really pulled Boston together. I think that rallying cry of Boston Strong is we still see that today with the media.
Right, but we call it the Boston bombing or the marathon bombing, but you have to realize how many different stories are part of it. There was the actual bombing itself on the marathon day.
Right.
Then there was the manhunt. Then there was the capture of the alleged bombers. Then there's the beginning of the trial. Then there are the stories of the survivors. So there's a whole myriad of different stories wrapped into one instant.
Well, yeah. Oh, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's been our entire year. I mean, we talk about this all the time. It's literally been our entire year of coverage is, okay, who's leaving the hospital now? Who is going to allow us to go into Spalding Hospital and witness a therapy session? Who is going to allow us to go into their home? Who's going to allow us to see them learn how to drive again? You know, it's been for the media an entire year, and it's honestly kind of put a lot of pressure on us for this upcoming moment as well.
Well, and David and Katie, you're both running, and given your journalistic backgrounds, will this be running through your mind as you're running?
Will what be?
Will this? Will the whole? Will the whole?
You
Will
have a
the
lot of
events of
time.
last year? I mean, exactly. You have a lot of time, and will these kind of the thoughts of last year? Will they be spinning through your minds while you're running?
I think we've probably all thought about what we're going to think about on that start line, and I don't think any of us really know. I think we'll let that emotion, the thoughts come in waves, because who knows what you're really going to be feeling, what those visceral reactions will be like.
Right. Running is about being in the moment and being present to what's happening with your body and around you. I'm more cautious and curious about what's going to happen to me as a runner and as a participant in the Boston Marathon as I take a right on Hereford and a left on Boylston. And as you're going down Boylston, it is a huge stretch of real estate. And
So
when
much
you
longer
see,
than you
And when you
realize.
see that finish line, I mean, I'm getting goose chills now just thinking about it, but then just to experience the people on the way, when you pass the Forum, it's going to be heart-wrenching. And when you pass the finish line, just being present to the moment, to the people, to the instance.
Yeah. All right. Well, that leads us right into our next segment. Thank you guys so much for weighing in, and thank you for watching. The conversation is just getting started. Join the Press Party chat on Twitter and right here online. Stay tuned for our next segment. Marathon Monday is just around the corner. Welcome back. I'm Katie Eastman. We are just one weekend away from the day so many of us have been waiting for. Marathon Monday. The media, the spectators, and even the runners can expect a lot of security changes this year. Erica Mora explains.
The Boston Marathon belongs to all of us, and that will never change.
Without a doubt, the 2014 Boston Marathon will be like no other.
When times get tough, we persevere.
With 36,000 runners, it's the largest field since the 100th anniversary. Local, national, and even international news organizations will be there. Last year's tragedy prompted major security changes.
Bomb-sniffing canines will be along the route, and an extensive network of surveillance cameras will keep an eye on the expected 1 million spectators.
To apply for media credentials meant giving the BAA personal information, like citizenship status and even a social security number. The BAA is also restricting certain areas and will definitely not give out extra passes to media outlets like it has in the past. The new regulations are keeping media on their toes, trying to figure out just how to cover this year's Boston Marathon. For Press Party, I'm Erica Mora.
So we were just talking in the segment before what David and I are going to be feeling when we run those 26.2 miles. We're not exactly sure, but Erica, you were at the finish line last year and you're going to be there again. So what will you be feeling as a reporter?
I have no clue. I would love to answer that question. I just don't know. I talked about this on Boston Herald Radio the other day, actually on Tuesday, about how there's this immense pressure for there was an immense pressure on Tuesday for it to be a day of closure for so many people, and then there's immense pressure, I feel like, for myself, for it to be a day of closure as well on Monday.
Right, a closure for the entire year.
Right,
almost.
and I just don't know if that's realistic for anyone, and it is, but there's also a sense of I almost can't wait for it to be over, because then I can go back to being a normal reporter in the sense of marathon will be behind me, the year of healing is over. Is it really over? I don't know, but we'll see.
Yeah. A lot of security changes. Do you think this is going to affect how the story is told Or how, I mean, reporters can't bring backpacks, they can't do certain things. Do you think it's going to seem like a military zone?
No, I think reporters, they're malleable. They are used to working in many different environments and situations. So I think it's just going to be that day, just a typical day for you. You'll do your job, you'll report. I think there's going to be a huge emotional letdown on Tuesday, from the runners to the community to the reporters. But then the good thing about reporters, there's always something to work on. I mean, whether it's a Monday or Tuesday or a Saturday, there are stories that need to be told, and I'm sure you'll do a great job telling the story of the day.
Thank you.
We're going to see, okay, so already reporters had a really tough time getting credentials. Have you gotten your credentials yet?
I have not physically gone down.
This is the first time you have to go and physically get them in
so
person.
They typically what will happen is the BAA will send a sort of a press kit to the newsroom with extra press badges and jackets and lanyards, etc. But this year we actually have to go down and present our ID, a valid ID, to get our credentials. So.
But you do that for the president when he comes to town.
I do, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's not a big deal. Like, it's an extra half an hour of my day.
And I think most people understand exactly where they're coming from. So.
Sure, if you were doing this for the Stanley Cup finals, etc., it'd be the same thing. Any major sporting event, any major political event, the World Series, you have to. And that's because they're used to seeing that ramp up for security for those events. We're just not used to seeing it and that's the impact of this event. The impact of this terrorist event was that it changed the nature of the Boston Marathon from this wonderful open event to something now where we have to think twice when we go there, and we have to be more conscious about security, et cetera.
Erica, you sent me an article this morning of a guy saying why our city isn't Boston strong. I'm sure it's a very controversial story, saying the reason we're saying Boston strong is because we're scared, and it's a narrative that needs to be changed. We need to show that we're Boston strong by getting the murders down in our city, doing more charity work. When you hear that, you're kind of shaking your head, saying like, what are you gonna do?
It's pop culture, it's a saying, it helped people get through a tremendously difficult time. When Boston Strong appears on Christmas ornaments, it's taken on a life of its own. I think people can feel whatever they want to feel to get through the day. And if it's Boston Strong or Boston Weak or Boston Mediocre, that's okay. What's unusual about this event is it affected everybody in the town. It's a marathon that stretches from Hopkinton, Massachusetts, all the way to Boylston Street, Boston, Mass. So there's no layer of being removed from somebody that ran, somebody that was injured, somebody that works at a hospital, a reporter. So I think it brought people together in that way, whether you're strong on a particular day or feeling not that strong. It's a saying.
Yeah, and even, I was talking about this the other day with a friend of mine who is not originally from Boston, but she said to me, I finally feel like I'm from Boston and not treated as a transplant, because Boston, there is such a pride in the community that if you're not Boston born and raised, you're not really from Boston. So I do think that it brought an entire community together. And yeah, maybe those conversations about, bringing down the murders and the other tragedies that go around the city, maybe this will happen after Monday, but I don't think that there's anything wrong with the saying and the hashtag that's going on.
And to your point, there was that survey that was released several weeks ago, I think 2 weeks ago, that suggested that most people feel Boston, in our reaction to what has happened, has become a better place. And in a lot of ways it has. We're a little more cognizant of each other, I think, and perhaps even a little more caring. There is a little more sense of community. Now, how long that lasts, I don't know.
In ways that we can't directly put a number on, just in ways that we can see. And we can put a number on the amount of money being raised for charity.
I think it's phenomenal.
That's going to be a lot more.
The Forsyth Institute, or for Dana-Farber, or for Spalding Rehab. This has been a wonderful opportunity. And I think John Hancock and their charity program has taken the lead in setting up different funds for the One Fund, for the Martin Richard. Boston is a very generous community, and I think the spirit behind the charity runner shows that.
Yeah, and that's one thing that has been amazing for us as reporters, to be able to tell all these stories of the charity runners and to help even raise more money doing it, where we couldn't necessarily do as many stories before because it wasn't in the limelight as much, and now we are just able to tell all of these people's stories. So that's really wonderful.
Right, but we still have that, David Ortiz part of us too, and yes, we've taken the city back and all that kind of good stuff. But on Tuesday morning, driving in on the expressway, I'm still going to be told by a lot of people that I'm number one.
Yeah, exactly.
So we have that part of us too.
And that's fine.
Right.
That's fine. Well, thank you guys for weighing in, and thank you to you for watching. Up next, the anniversary coverage that ended in a scare. Welcome back to Press Party. This Tuesday marked 1 year since last year's marathon. Families of victims gathered at the finish line for an emotional wreath-laying ceremony. Then hundreds packed into the Heinz Convention Center to remember the people we lost and tell the stories of the ones still healing. The Norden brothers, who each lost their right leg, chose to do a relay for the entire 26.2 miles of the marathon course. Unfortunately, their finish was overshadowed by a suspicious man carrying a backpack chanting "Boston Strong" as he crossed the finish line.
He was walking briskly, like bare feet, just walking down Boylston, like in the middle of Boylston Street. So it was kind of a weird looking thing, you know, coming out of like a movie or something. It was kind of weird.
Police blocked off Boylston Street and detonated that backpack and another one left by the media in two controlled explosions. We found out later the backpack the man was carrying contained a pressure cooker filled with confetti. He is a self-described performance artist now being held on $100,000 bail. Now, Erica and I were getting dinner at Parish Cafe a few blocks from the finish line when this happened, so we went over to cover it, unfortunately. I mean, it was just, what a way that we did not want to end this day that was so emotional for so many people, and I think we were both just angry. Not knowing what had happened, it seemed like a hoax, and we were just...
I was so upset. I mean, I had been with the Norden family the entire day on the bus, and I had just left them at the finish line. They had just crossed, and I had just talked to JP and Paul, and they were so happy to have done this. It was such a long journey for them emotionally and physically, because they walked, you know, a good chunk of that. And then to have to go back to someone just playing this hoax and this joke was incredibly sad for me, even personally.
Dr. Bob, we have to report, it's a story.
Yes.
But is it taking away from anything? Is it?
Well, no, well, you have to report it because it's an important story, particularly given the poignancy of the day. The question is, how much publicity do you give the individual performance artist, and I use the word artist very loosely in this particular instance, who is clearly doing this in order to get publicity, I would think, or you know, we may find out later on that he is ill and he needs some treatment. But it is something that we have to report on. It's part of our job as journalists.
When you saw this story, David, what did you think?
Oh, it's horribly unfortunate. Now, you have to realize that, you know, in the live, late-breaking, get it on first and fast, we're going to cover it. But then I also think, you know, we're moving towards the weekend, so the expo and the runners and the marathon will again take the lead. So when you look at the whole arc of this story from Tuesday to next Tuesday, I think it'll be a small blip.
A small blip, that was what I was just going to say.
Right.
Just something, oh, this awkward, weird thing happened, forget about it. Unfortunately, one of the backpacks was NECN's backpack, and that makes you think, okay, could something like this happen on Marathon Monday? And the police have assured us there wasn't as much security there. There's no way something like that could happen. But it does add a level of fear and anxiety to it, especially since you're going to be there again.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I've definitely made peace with the fact that you're just never truly safe. And I'm not talking in regards to another attack like we had a year ago, but I mean, you're just never safe. I could walk outside right now and get
something
hit by
could happen
something.
anywhere. It's
right.
not necessarily
right. But it does add a little bit of anxiety going into it, particularly for me, who is going to be carrying a backpack that day. And who
Are you allowed to carry a backpack?
Yeah, because that's my equipment on it. They'll have to check it. But I mean, it'll probably be checked, and I will probably get several questions throughout the day of whose backpack is that? What's in that backpack? And hopefully I won't lose patience, you know, I won't get tired and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sick and tired of answering this question, you know, but
a small thing to do.
A small thing to do, and small thing in comparison to less security, so.
But as Dave McGilvery, the race director for the Boston Marathon, said, this is going to be the most secure, the most safe place on the planet from Hopkinton to Boston.
Right, that's the thing. I have heard some people saying, oh, I'm not sure if I'm going to go, and it's probably safer to go to the marathon than it is to stay in your apartment at this point.
And take a shower, probably.
Right.
So,
exactly.
and I think that, you know, the idea, I think there's going to be twice the normal crowd, precisely because of what happened last year. So I think it's a way to kind of demonstrate that we're not going to give in to the terrorists, that they didn't get, because the act of terrorism is beyond the bomb. The act of terrorism is planting the seed of terror in someone's mind. And we're not going to succumb to that, I think. I think as a community, we've already said we're going to come out in force.
And the weather's going to be nice, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be a beautiful day. And a great day to run.
We'll be running. Erica, you'll be at the finish
I'll
line.
be at the finish line.
Where will you be?
I'll probably be someplace on Heartbreak Hill
you will be.
I'm not mowing my lawn.
All right, we'll look for you there. We might need some cheering on because that's...
Katie, go David. Just,
We've got you. We've got
Just
you.
make sure we're still running,
We'll
not
have red shirts
crawling
on.
at that point. All right, well, it's time for you guys to chime in our comment section and tweet at us with the hashtag PressParty. Make sure to follow all the Boston Herald's latest marathon coverage. We'll be out there all day on Monday bringing you the stories of Boston reclaiming the race. For Press Party and Suffolk University, I'm Katie Eastman.